Have you ever fallen into this feeling? Everything between the two of you seemed to be going so well. Then suddenly, she went silent. No more texts, no more sweet words, only you, left with a dozen unanswered questions. You try to figure out what's going on, but the more you try, the more you get lost in an emotional maze she seemingly doesn't want you to escape from. This isn't just your story. This is a test that many modern men have to face, stepping into the world of dating filled with ambiguity, challenges, and psychological games. And if you're not steady, you'll become the victim. Not because you're weak, but because you weren't equipped to handle it the right way. This video doesn't teach you revenge. It doesn't teach manipulation. It teaches you how to reclaim your position, how to live like a man who can no longer be played, because he knows exactly who he is, what he wants, and what he deserves. Stay until the end, because maybe, for the first time, you'll understand why she went silent, and why you no longer need to quietly suffer. Part 1. When you're ghosted. It's not your fault, but it is your test. At a cafe in San Diego, Jeff, a software engineer, recounted, "She and I talked all night, shared stories about our childhood, our dreams. I thought I had found someone special. Then suddenly, not a single message, no explanation. She disappeared as if she never existed." That's called ghosting, and it's a cold slap to the trust of any man who still lives sincerely in a world full of emotional masks. The truth is, it's not because you're too weak, not because you're not good enough, but because you stepped into a game where the rules are unclear and your emotions are being tested. Women don't always play games to hurt you, but sometimes they want to see how you'll react when ignored, rejected, or challenged. That's how this world tests whether you can control yourself or not. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach you to strike back. It teaches you something greater, to hold your ground amidst chaos. You can't stop someone from leaving, but you can choose not to lose yourself when they go. It's not the event that hurts us. It's our judgment of it. Marcus Aurelius. And if you're in Jeff's situation, I'm not advising you to be cold or indifferent. I'm simply telling you, don't let someone's silence make you question your own worth. Part 2. When she's hot and cold, don't react, observe. In New York, Daniel, a young entrepreneur, shared in a men's self-development group. She called me her ideal man, said she'd never felt so connected to anyone. And the next day, I was ignored. I texted her. She saw it but didn't reply. I panicked, thought about all kinds of reasons, tried hard to make things go back to the way they were. Sound familiar? One day she's like the warmth of an April sun, sweet and close. The next, as cold as Wall Street in winter. This isn't random. This is a pattern, a test, a kind of push-pull, drawing you close, then pushing you away, just to see how you'll react. A man who doesn't understand this falls into the classic trap, bombarding her with texts, blaming himself, doing everything to make her happy again. But a man who understands philosophy does something different. He doesn't react. He observes. He sees the pattern. He recognizes the game. And more importantly, he doesn't lose his calm because of someone else's emotional swings. When you don't get caught in emotional games, you flip the script. She'll start wondering, why isn't he reacting? Why doesn't he need my validation? And that's when you regain your position, not by controlling her, but by controlling yourself. Remember, a strong man isn't swayed by erratic behavior. He's guided by principles and depth. The question for you is, next time she disappears strategically, will you panic, or will you smile quietly and keep walking your path? Part 3. Breadcrumbing. When she gives you crumbs of hope to keep you around. In Austin, Texas, there's a guy named Brian. He works in game design, an honest and slightly introverted man. He shared that he once dated a girl he met online. Every time they texted, she used lots of emojis and occasionally sent cute selfies. She always said she was busy but kept in touch. Sometimes she'd say, "You're someone I really care about," then vanish for days and suddenly send flirty texts like, "I miss you." It felt like she gave just enough to keep me from leaving. That's breadcrumbing, a psychological tactic where someone doesn't truly invest in the relationship but keeps you around with small emotional crumbs. A sudden message, a promise never fulfilled, a scene right when you're about to give up. And if you're not clear-headed, you'll stay, waiting, hoping. But a man who lives by philosophy doesn't survive on crumbs. He doesn't try to rekindle a dying flame, he seeks clarity. Not because he's weak, but because he respects himself. Remember, no one has the right to keep you halfway with half-hearted emotions. So what should you do? Don't get angry. Don't guilt her, don't beg. Just say something simple, clear and calm. I'm not looking for fleeting attention. If you're not truly interested in building something real, I won't be waiting. No threats, no pleading, no heartbreak. Just a choice from someone who understands the value of his time and energy. A person who can't offer commitment doesn't deserve to hold you back with vague hope. A mature man doesn't fear silence. He only fears living a life without clarity. Part 4. Boundaries aren't to control her. They're to protect you. In Seattle, Washington, a man named Marcus, a calm and courteous university lecturer, shared his dating experience with a beautiful, charming, intelligent, and very challenging woman. Right from the beginning, she would often arrive late without notice. One time we had a dinner date. I made a reservation and waited 40 minutes. She showed up, smiled slightly and said, "I forgot, but we can still have fun now." I smiled along. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of her, but because I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. That's a lesson many men learn too late. If you don't set boundaries, others, unintentionally or deliberately, will cross them. And boundaries are not about controlling what she can do. A boundary is a declaration. This is what I accept, and this is what I cannot continue with if it happens again. A man who lives by philosophy doesn't need to shout to be respected. He speaks clearly and acts consistently. For example, she frequently cancels last minute. Say, "I value both of our time. If plans keep changing, maybe we shouldn't make any more." She tries to provoke jealousy by bringing up an ex. "I'm not in competition with anyone. If you haven't let go of the past, I respect that. But I won't stand in the middle." Speak gently, but firmly. Not challenging, not controlling, simply showing self-respect. Boundaries don't push people away. They only keep those who deserve to stay. And if you're afraid that setting a boundary will make her leave, remember, someone who walks away because you spoke honestly was never planning to stay long. Part 5. When you're being tested, do you react or stand firm? In Chicago, at a weekend gathering, James, a former military officer turned fitness coach, shared a moment when he nearly lost his composure. We were having a great conversation when she suddenly mentioned another guy. "He's really good to me, always protects me. I feel safe around him." She was clearly watching my face, like she was waiting to see if I'd get angry or jealous. James smiled, but it wasn't a smile to hide the hurt. He smiled because he realized this wasn't a conversation. It was a test, and he didn't need to participate. He responded in a calm, low voice. "Sounds like he knows what he's doing." Then he changed the subject, refusing to be pulled into the emotional game. That's not weakness, that's real strength. Calm doesn't mean emotionless. It means not letting emotions control you. Stoicism teaches, if the storm isn't out there, but inside you, then you are the one who decides whether or not there's a storm. And when a woman tests you with silence, coldness, or subtle jabs, what she wants to know is not how loud you'll retaliate. She wants to know, will you break, or will you stay steady, unshaken? Think about it. When you react aggressively, you become predictable. When you stay calm, you become deep, unreadable, and truly attractive. Remember, you don't need to raise your voice to prove your strength. You just need to remain unmoved when others scream. That's how a man strikes back, not with power but with composure. Part 6. When you have a greater goal, you're no longer easy to control. In Atlanta, Georgia, there's a man named Kevin, the owner of a small bakery he had just opened after the pandemic. While chatting with a close group of friends, he shared, "I was in a relationship where every day I felt tense because I never knew whether she'd be warm or cold. But then I asked myself, why am I pouring so much energy into someone who's not seriously investing in me when I haven't even finished building my own dream?" And ever since I poured myself fully into this bakery, I suddenly stopped caring about those seen but no reply texts. When a man has a clear goal, he becomes hard to manipulate. Why? Because he doesn't need someone else's emotions to feel worthy. Because his attention isn't guided by waves, but by long-term charts. And that makes him incredibly attractive. A woman can pull you off track only if you're standing still, but if you're already moving, no one can pull you away from your path. When you're focused on building your career, improving your body, expanding your mindset, and strengthening your inner values, the hot and cold games suddenly seem small. You won't be shaken by sudden silence or vague words because you know. You don't live waiting for someone to validate your worth. You've already proven it by how you live each day. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you choose the long road, you must know how to reject short-term emotions. If you're building a life with direction, then no one has the right to pull you off course. That's not indifference, that's focus, not coldness, but clarity of priorities. And when a woman sees that in you, she may be surprised you didn't jump when she flirted. But then, that very thing will make her curious. What makes him so grounded? What could possibly matter more than me in his world? Part 7. Emotional revenge doesn't make you stronger. It only shows you're being controlled. In Denver, Colorado, there's a man named Anthony, a customer service employee at an insurance company who once went through a painfully quiet breakup. She ghosted me after 3 very close months. I was angry. I wanted to post pictures with someone else, make her jealous, make her feel what it's like to be abandoned. But then I realized I was planning revenge on someone who no longer cared. And that made me look small. Emotional revenge is like drinking poison and hoping the other person feels pain. You think you're reclaiming power by ignoring her, posting suggestive stories, or acting happy with someone new. But in truth, you're reacting. You're letting someone else's behavior dictate your own. Every action driven by retaliation is proof that you're not truly in control. A man who lives with Stoic principles understands this. He doesn't need to teach anyone a lesson. He doesn't need to make anyone regret. He just walks away quietly, calmly, with dignity. When a woman deliberately tests you through jealousy, coldness, or indirect insults, you can respond with no response. Not because you're weak, but because you no longer operate on that emotional level. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And just imagine, you run into the person who once played with your emotions. She tries to restart something, but this time you're not angry, and you don't need anything from her. That's not winning, that's freedom. You're no longer in the game, and your calmness leaves her unsure what to do. When you no longer need to win, you become undefeatable. Part 8. Prioritize peace, because you can't love anyone when you're in chaos. At a group therapy session in Los Angeles, a man named Elijah, 38 years old, formerly a startup manager, said through tears, "I thought I loved her, but in truth, I was just addicted to emotional highs and lows. One day she made me feel like the center of her world. The next, I was invisible. I lived in anxiety, couldn't sleep deeply, skipped the gym, lost focus, and I kept telling myself, this is love. But it wasn't love, it was chaos. Love doesn't make you lose yourself. If a relationship is draining you every day, what you need isn't to try harder, but to step back and look clearly. Stoicism teaches you can't control others, but you have full control over where you place your attention. And peace isn't something you find when things are calm. It's something you preserve, even when others bring storms. You can respect her, love her, and still say, I need time for myself. I need space not to lose myself. When you put peace first, you sleep better, and you make clearer decisions. You love with clarity, not dependency. And strangely, it's when you stop letting a relationship define your worth that you become more attractive. The one who's not afraid to lose is the one who can't be controlled. If she truly loves you, she'll respect your boundaries. But if she disappears the moment you prioritize yourself, you've just discovered that the love only existed when you were submissive. Choose the person who brings you peace, or choose peace and walk forward alone. Part 9. Patience. Not because you're weak, but because you control your strength. At a park in Boston, I met Thomas, a former college basketball athlete. He shared a bitter lesson. After we broke up, she started posting pictures with someone else, hinting captions like, "Life feels so new." I almost texted her. Anything, just to respond. But then I went to the gym. I ran until I couldn't think anymore, and I realized I don't need to react. I need to be patient with myself. Patience isn't passive. It's one of the highest forms of strength. In a world where everyone expects you to reply when seen, retaliate when jealous, speak up when hurt, a man who can pause, stay silent while his heart screams, is not easily manipulated. Patience is the art of sitting still when everything inside you is shouting to act. You don't need to reply to a message right away. You don't need to explain every slight change in her attitude. You especially don't need to do something just to save face. A man who acts in haste is usually uncertain. A man who moves slowly, calmly, often sees farther. You can watch her test you with silence, with vagueness, with little jealousy bait. And all you need to do is breathe, observe, don't react. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Suffering doesn't come from the events, but from how we interpret them." And when you understand that, you begin to choose your response. Not because you fear being wrong, but because you know one wrong reaction can destroy the strength you've built over years. You don't wait to win the game of who cares less. You wait because you won't let a fleeting feeling define a long-term decision. Part 10. Knowing when to walk away. Not because you're giving up, but because you've grown. In Houston, Texas, a man named Darius, who once worked in finance, shared at a private meeting for men recovering from toxic relationships. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving her. I left because I could no longer love myself in that relationship. She used to be gentle, but the small tests kept coming. Cancelled plans, reverse jealousy, silent treatment, bringing up her ex. Darius did his best. He communicated clearly, stayed patient, didn't retaliate, held his values. But nothing changed. And then he realized, strength isn't continuing, strength is stopping at the right time. Love is not a series of endless tests you have to pass to be accepted. Stoicism teaches you must never trade your self-respect to hold on to something unworthy. Many men stay too long because of hope, because of sunk costs, because of fear of being left. But what they truly lose is themselves. A wise man doesn't walk away in anger, but because he knows his limits. And sometimes the most painful thing is the final silence. No accusations, no farewell, just walking away, quietly, but firmly. I don't need her to understand why I left. I just need to stop betraying myself ever again. And you know what happens next? Respect returns, but this time, not from the one who tested you. From yourself when you look in the mirror and say, I chose peace, I chose freedom. Conclusion. When you stop playing the game, you become the one who sets the rules. All the strategies you just read, from calmness to walking away, are not about manipulating or controlling women. They're about mastering yourself. When you stop reacting out of pain, when you stop living for someone else's validation, when your goals rise above seen but no reply, at that point, you're no longer a pawn on the emotional chessboard. You are the one who chooses which game is worth playing and when to walk away. A man who cannot be shaken, not because he's hard, but because his roots run deep within himself. If you've ever been ghosted, if you've been played with, teased, ignored after sweet promises, know this: you're not weak for feeling hurt, but you'll remain weak if you let that hurt define you. Starting today, live as a man who doesn't need to control anyone because he has mastered himself. No longer chasing attention, no longer retaliating in anger, no longer lost over someone uncertain. You don't need to win someone else's game. You just need to create your own, where only those who are genuine are invited to enter.